is Dianne Theakstone, and I'm registered blind.
For the vlog, and that is, can you tell me a bit about yourself and your disability?
Sure. So I'm registered blind. I've been registered blind since the age of 5. So I've got memories of colours and a bit of spatial awareness, things like that, which I think does help. Um, I've had 4 guide dogs till present. The most recent dog that I had to retire last year, sort of during lockdown because of health reasons. So I'm back to using a long cane at the moment. So I'm being a long cane user, and um, yeah, so that's a bit about who my disability. Um, in terms of, do you want me to tell you about my work background?
Great, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of employment, most of my employment has been connected with research. I've been pretty much an eternal student through university, doing various sort of diplomas and masters. I did a PhD as well in social sciences. I've got a background in housing studies, which really set the ball rolling. So I've been at Stirling University for quite a number of years doing different masters and uh, the PhD. And most recently, uh, my employment was connected with a piece of research on social care. So it was the My Support My Choice project, which looked at people's experiences of self-directed support across Scotland. And I was employed part-time for that project through Self-Directed Support Scotland, which was fun. That ran for 2 years, and then after that, I got inspired to go and train as a social worker. So I did that and finished this year, 2022, from Strathclyde University. But when I came out the other end, I had an opportunity to go back into academia instead of social work. So I've actually chosen to go back into academia. And at the moment, I'm a research fellow for the ISPA project, which is about the interconnections of place-based aging. So I'm on this project for 5 years and doing a lot of work with peer researchers, co-production, which is really exciting. So that's really my background, is mainly co-production pieces of research that I've been employed to do, and some sort of access audits as well. I've been involved as a freelance consultant to do that as well. Bits of teaching with housing students, different undergrads and postgraduate students as well. Yeah. So I've got quite a mixed background, I think you would say.
And quite a busy background as well, so
Yeah, quite a busy background as well. I think one of the reasons that I did go into social work is that, and you'll probably know this yourself, Danielle, is that when you're in academia, sometimes you're going from one research project to the next, and they can be quite short term, and they don't give you much security because you're going from one to the other. So I actually went into social work thinking I would come out and go for a job that was more permanent. And then I got lured back into academia. So it is a bit of a life choice to follow research, I have to say, because you don't have that security unless you get maybe a lectureship or something.
Yeah, but I guess 5 years is a pretty good.
5 years is pretty good. I mean, it's a bit like gold dust actually getting a research fellow that's 5 years. Normally they're about 2 or 3 years. So yeah, no, I'm thrilled. It's really good,
Yeah,
and it's with a team that I know really well. So it feels like I've rejoined a family because I've
yeah,
gone back and
yeah, of
yeah,
course,
so
yeah.
it's so lovely.
Tell me a bit about how does your disability affect you in the workplace?
So I would say that being registered blind probably affects me mostly in terms of communication and environmental access. So when I'm working, I tend to work electronically. I can read Braille. I did study mostly in Braille when I was at school, but after leaving school, I've tended to work electronically because it's a bit quicker, or much quicker actually, to work electronically. So I have a screen reader, which is basically like a voice on the computer, and it reads what's on the screen. There are times where the accessibility of perhaps websites is not great for the screen reader, or there might be documents that are like PDFs that are difficult for the screen reader to pick up because it might think it's an image or a picture, so it might ignore things. So I need to have a support worker when I'm working who can help me convert some documents into Word, or if I'm looking at tables, quite often I get my support worker to put them into Excel because Excel is quite griddy. It's like a grid that you go up and down, left and right. So you can't get lost too much in Excel. So I tend to look at tables in that format. And if there are diagrams or charts, then my support worker will write in the document a little description of what's going on, which is really good. So a lot of my needs is about looking at materials and making them more accessible so that I can read things as well. And when I produce materials as well, so when I write things on the computer, my support worker proofreads what I write, because sometimes it's quite easy to mishear what JAWS, my screen reader, is saying sometimes. So it could be a similar word that I've used, but it's actually wrong. So my support worker proofreads my documents, and also does all the sort of like the visual presentation formatting as well. So he'll look at the font type, the size, color, maybe color contrast. If there are project documents, then we might be using banners and footers and all that kind of page numbers, all those sort of loads of visual things that you need to think about. So that keeps my support worker very busy. In terms of environmental access as well, so the way that I orientate myself is that I will learn routes to destinations that I'm doing on a regular basis. And within work, sometimes I need to travel to unfamiliar environments. So it could be conferences, it could be if I'm doing training sessions, doing maybe group work, meetings, different things like that. So my support worker would give me guided assistance in those circumstances. because they're sort of one-off, irregular trips that we're doing, and I don't know how to get from A to B with that. So it's very much when you're using a cane, for example, you're very much trying to remember your route as you walk down a street, for example. So you try and remember where bollards are, where bins are, where uh, where there's like poles or bus stops or even overhanging trees, things like that. So it does become quite a memory test when you're going around. So going out and walking is not actually that relaxing for me because I'm always thinking about where I'm going and what the next step is.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, that's the main jobs that my support worker does, and also actually connected with the communication when we're in group situations or if I'm doing training. Sometimes my support worker will help me attract people's attention in social situations because people use eye contact for that, you know, if they want to speak to each other. So sometimes my support worker will get the attention of somebody that I want to speak to, which is really useful. Or at conferences, for example, I've said to my support worker, I want to chat to this person at the end of the session. So they would give me a hand to get the person's attention and go up at the end and things. So there's lots of things around communication and producing documents and navigating around environments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing that. It's really useful to
that's
hear
all right.
your experiences. The
It's
next question
quite
is,
long-winded, so you can just cut out what you want.
it was a lot of useful information, so that's great. So the next question is, can you tell me about how your disability has impacted positively in getting a job and or retaining employment?
I think one of the most positive aspects of being registered blind connected with my employment has been the passion that I have for disabled people's rights and disabled people's rights to independent living. And I think that really comes through in the research that I've been involved with because it's all about empowerment, co production, peer researchers. So it's all about my ethos. So I think that's a big positive because it enhances and colours how I come at the world and what I would like to see change in society. So I think that's a big that is a big plus. I've also got, I suppose, what you would call a shared frame of reference as well with a lot of other disabled people who maybe have different types of impairments, but will have in common quite a lot of the same challenges or the same barriers. So you can relate to each other, which I find is really useful as well for building a rapport and having that empathy with people. So I find it does benefit the work that I do because it's all bound up together with my identity and who I am.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
The next question is, can you give some good examples of good practice from your employer supporting you in the workplace?
Good examples. I think in terms of good practice examples, feeling that you're valued and welcomed by your employer is really important. So that would definitely be a good practice, and something that sounds really simple, but it just makes all the difference, because you can tell if people feel uncomfortable or don't really want you around. And I think having that feeling that you're part of a team and that you're valued for your knowledge and your skills is wonderful. You know, you can really participate and feel included. So I think that would be one of the major positives that I would highlight for good practice. Also, in terms of, especially with me, I rely on access to work, which is the national scheme that provides assistance to disabled people in employment. So having access to work in place is a big bonus as well, a big positive when it works well, and having a support worker all set up, having the employer on board because they need to sign some of the paperwork and they need to agree my sort of needs that are identified as well. So having an employer who knows about access to work and feels confident in going through that process is amazing as well. It makes all the difference, and takes the pressure off having to explain perhaps again and again how processes work, because they already know how it works with access to work or understand how it should work. So that's a big plus. And
always
yeah,
help having to repeat yourself.
oh yeah, absolutely.
And how these can be implemented into policy making. So, how should do you think good practices should be implemented into policy making in the workplace?
Oh, so I think maybe there could be improvements at local level and national level. I mean, and this is just a personal point to help speed processes up, because they're based down south. Uh, they're still very paper based as well. So when you're filling out forms or doing timesheets, it's still very paper based and not an opportunity to review how that all works as well in terms of policies around communication. So that's a personal point of view. I would really like that to happen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It would
Yeah.
make things so much easier.
Yeah. And I think it's possible, because I mean we have, banking apps these days. I do my banking on my mobile, and it uses face recognition to get in, and I have a password and it's all secured and everything, and I can do all sorts with my money and banking, and yet access to work are still requiring, time sheets to be printed off and signed by multiple people and things like that. So yeah, I think it would definitely be possible, I think, and still make it secure as well. And at a local level, I mean, I was just thinking within uh, sort of employers at a local level, having more co-production embedded in how they work, how their culture is within that organization would be really beneficial as well, so that they know what the experiences are or the views are of disabled service users or employees that they're involved with. So I think more co-production being embedded in what people do at a practical level would be really helpful as well. Um, and thinking about representation. So how many disabled employees do they have, and at what levels do disabled employees occupy, and thinking about that sort of analysis so that it can help progress, their organization towards being more inclusive. So they might need to look at employing more disabled people, or thinking about maybe the having people at the strategy level as well as the operational level and things like that. So making disabled people more visible and more representative within organisations as well.
Absolutely, thanks for that.
That's all right.
What could supported employment programs do better?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I have been involved with, I was on a pilot scheme connected with a Centre for Inclusive Living way back in 2009, I think it was, or 2008. And it was focused upon trying to encourage disabled people to work within the housing sector. So I was involved with a sort of supported scheme then. So I think having those opportunities available is really useful, because sometimes you need to be visible around offices and organisations before people can maybe address maybe sort of, misconceptions about how disabled people can contribute and be valued as employees. So I think having more opportunities available like that, and having funding available as well, is really important for supported employment.
Do,
Yeah.
do you feel that supported employment programs are long enough? Like they're often for like 13 weeks or whatever. Do you feel that
No, I mean, yeah, I think the other side of it is that it needs to be meaningful, doesn't it? So I think when you have a whole load of short-term supported employment schemes, it probably isn't that meaningful for the individual who's involved, and probably not for the employer that's involved either. So I think being more effective, thinking more long term, is really important. So being involved with an employer for, just for example, say a year, and then you have a view to working towards a certain position within the organization, that would be more meaningful, I think, than just sort of a revolving door of different schemes that you're just going around and round in.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. The
sorry.
next question is about how does being a disabled person in employment impact on your well-being?
Being employed as a disabled person is really important to my well-being. I thrive on working, on being busy, contributing and feeling valued. So yeah, it means a lot to me to be employed and being part of the workforce. I I also value voluntary work as well, alongside that, which quite often gets forgotten about. And I think that's an important side to employment as well, and it can complement what you're doing. So I really thrive on being kept busy, contributing, and yeah, feeling included, I think.
Sharing
Yeah.
about your positive impact on your well-being and how much that is important to you. The next question is about yourself and what key things have you learned as part of your employment journey to date?
I think one of the key points I've learned during my employment journey would be that you need to have goals that you set at a personal level, which feel achievable and not to be pressured into thinking along the lines of I must do everything at top speed and I must put loads of pressure on myself to maybe do this qualification in a year. If you decide to do a qualification over a couple of years, maybe go part time, then that's absolutely fine because at the end of the day, it's not a race. So I think that's one of the most important lessons I've learned when I've been trying to gain new skills for employment is about thinking about how does this impact on me because there are other challenges when you're involved as a disabled person in education or employment, which could be around traveling, using public transport, your health condition affecting how you feel each day, which could fluctuate, different factors like that. So it's really important to think about how will I be able to cope with the demands that I've put on myself, and just make it realistic. Just make it realistic because I think sometimes there are these pressures to go in and achieve XYZ in the quickest possible time, and almost be, quite competitive with other people, and that's not always the best attitude to have.
Yeah, I would agree that it's very personal to you, and yeah, just
Yeah,
being realistic is so important and not putting that added pressure on yourself.
yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I mean, a nice example I picked up from a guide dog instructor was they were saying they would prefer somebody that they were visiting to make them a cup of tea. And if it took 20 minutes for the disabled person to make that cup of tea, that's absolutely fine. And they would much prefer that than, say, a family relative hopped in, made the cup of tea in 2 minutes. It's more meaningful, for the person to have made that cup of tea over 20 minutes. And at the end of the day, it's not a race. It's not about making the fastest cup of tea in the world.
Yeah,
So,
you're right. That is a nice example.
yeah.
Um, so there's one last question. What tips would you give to any employers watching this, um, with regards to employing and retaining a diverse workforce?
I would say to employers that they should brush up on access to work so that they know what funding is available, what assistance is available, in terms of support workers, equipment, travel, all the different elements, if you like, of having a disabled employee. I think that would be really important. And thinking through if they have quality impact assessments. So thinking through their quality impact assessments on their internal policies and their procedures. And that's a really good opportunity to get disabled people involved in co-production and helping to make it an inclusive and welcoming culture. And there can be small differences that just make all the difference. So that would be my tips.